Jason, I don't know about you, but through the years, I have noticed that my eyes have changed a little bit, and I've really come to appreciate electronic sights.
Well, that's called getting old, Denny, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Well, that brings us to our next segment in our video series on sights and optics. Today, we're talking about red dots and electronic sights.
So red dots or electronic sights are some of the most popular options on the market today. And there's so many different types, designs, companies out there. It can be really confusing at times.
It is. There are a huge variety of these types of optics out there. And we should probably tell the folks that the term red dot is really kind of a blanket term that we're using to describe these different optic systems that we've broken down into 3 categories: reflex sights, prism sights, and holographic sights.
Yep. Right now, Denny, let's talk about some of this terminology that you're using with these type sights, and let's talk about reflex.
Right, reflex sights. These tend to be the most economical of the 3 types of optics we're talking about today. The technology is fairly simple. They basically use an LED to project the dot up to an upright lens that kind of acts like a mirror that reflects that image back to you. So you've got your reticle, that's usually a dot. Sometimes it's a multi-image reticle, seemingly floating on the lens in front of your eye. And it's pretty cool. And you can actually zero that reticle in just like the crosshairs on a scope using elevation and windage adjustments. And they're actually quite simple engineering. Reflex sights are really cool also because they allow you to shoot with both eyes open.
The way you should be shooting anyway.
That's exactly right. Not compromising
Right.
your peripheral vision. You don't have to be completely lined up either with the dot. You know, if I lose my, I'm just going to grab this PCC here and show you an example here. I'm flagged and empty, as you can see. But you can actually lose your cheek weld. I've actually got this dot on, and I can still see my dot here and here and here. And as long as you're zeroed in,
Point of impact's going to be
exactly, you're still going to hit your target. It comes in really handy when you're shooting on the move. You know, I like to do some action competition shooting, some USPSA and run and gun stuff. And sometimes I don't have a exact proper cheek
Right.
weld when I'm running around, so that helps me out quite a bit. Reflex sights can also be used on pistols or rifles,
Right.
so they have a lot of different applications. So you have a small reflex sight off to the side here. This is my offset sight.
I actually used that particular one on my pistol. So
That's right, this is a Holosun 507, and they also tend to have a really long battery life as well.
So there are also some reflex sights that don't even need a battery to operate, or they use other sources of illumination or power generation to operate the sight as a backup power source, like solar panels, natural ambient light, or even tritium to project the reticle or dot on the lens.
That's right, we actually have 2 different examples here of that. We have a 510, Holosun 510 and a Holosun 507. Both of them have solar panels that you can see that kind of serve as a backup. So you're never going to completely lose your source of power for these because of this backup. And some reflex optics have a tremendous battery life. We mentioned that earlier, even up to 50,000 hours in some options because, you know, fairly simple engineering. You can also find reflex sights with enclosed emitters. Let's talk about that. Here's an example here with this Holosun 509 versus the Holosun 510. What's the difference? The difference is there's an additional lens and a complete housing that makes this waterproof versus this one, which is not. What's going to happen if this little tray fills up with water?
So
Jason?
we've actually seen this firsthand, Denny. So we were actually testing these out, poured a bottle of water on top of one of those, and it blocked the emitter.
Yeah, pooled up
You
right in
could
that
not
little area
see
there.
the dot whatsoever. So any kind of dirt, debris, or water, you know, they get blocked if you can't.
That's right. So pros and cons. Totally enclosed emitters tend to be a little heavier. If we were to compare this in weight, this 509 to this 507, the 509 is going to be a little heavier because there's a little extra metal there, right? So just some things to keep in mind as well.
So another thing to think about is how to mount your reflex sight. There are a lot of different sights with a variety of footprints and a wide variety of pistols already that come optics ready.
We got some on the wall
Yep,
right back
we
there.
sure do. So it can be really confusing trying to figure out what mounting plates to use for particular sight footprints. Some pistols are cut for only certain optics, and others have interchangeable plates to accommodate several different sights.
And some reflex sights come with rail mounting adapters. I'm going to grab one here as an example and show it to you. This is my Steel Challenge rimfire optics rifle. This is a Vortex Viper, and it comes with this rail mounting option here. So basically you are attaching the sight to the pick rail adapter and then clamping it on your rail.
Right.
And there are different applications for these reflex sights. Not only are they pistol sights. You can see they can be used on rifles. They can also be used as offset sights. See, this is an offset mounting option here. When would you use an offset sight? Or use it as a backup sight, or in a situation where you have to lean, make a really hard lean around the corner, and this is hard to do, but that's a little easier to do. So lots of different options for sure.
Gotcha. All right, let's get into the complicated stuff. This is a prism sight. So it's more like a rifle scope, but with fewer lenses. So instead of using an LED to project a reticle on a reflective lens, it uses a prism that flips the image. Most prism lights have a reticle etched into illuminated glass. They can also offer magnification like this Vortex Spitfire in 5 power, and the high-end ACOG like this.
Yeah, the ACOG is a 4 power, and really, really neat. A lot of technology going into these sights. They're generally more expensive because of the technology and the way they're engineered and built, and they're usually made for rifles and carbines. They usually have some type of rail mounting adapter systems as well, and they use, well, I'll take this one. This one, not that one. I'll tell you why. This one uses more power than a reflex sight, so the battery life is not going to be quite as long. But the really cool thing about the ACOG, this particular ACOG uses no batteries whatsoever. It works strictly off of ambient light that's gathered here and tritium on the inside of the device as well. Now, pros and cons, right? Really great. You got magnification, got kind of the best of both worlds, right? But eye relief. What is eye relief? Eye relief is the distance between your eye and the front lens of that optic. These have short eye relief. So if you have a shooting platform like this with a pick rail that's close to your eye, a prism sight might work just fine for you. But if this were the only rail mount I have, it's going to be so far forward that I'm not going to have any eye relief at all. I may be a little bitty speck of my target through that, and that's just not going to work.
Right. And then we have holographic sights like this EOTech here. Holographic sights are pretty high tech. They use a laser to transmit the reticle using a series of mirrors into the sight viewing area. The reticles can be 2 or 3 dimensional and appear to be floating in front of the optic when you're looking through the sight window.
Yeah, it's really cool. I remember the first time I looked through a holographic sight, and it really did look like a hologram floating. It looked like it's floating out there instead of in here. It's a really interesting technology. Another thing I'd like to point out is holographic sights like this EOTech, for instance, generally have a larger square or rectangular viewing window as opposed to tube-tight sights. So that gives you a bigger field of vision when you're using them. It also allows you to move your head around like we were talking about with reflex sights. If you don't have a really tight cheek weld, as long as you can still see your reticle, you're still probably going to be able to hit your target. Holographic sights are almost always used on long guns, rifles, or carbines. They work great with flip-up magnifiers like you can see on the wall on my Shorty AR pistol there. We'll talk more about that in our next series as well. And there's a lot of technology that goes into building these, so the battery life tends to be a little shorter, and they do tend to be just a little more expensive than the other type of sights.
I think we need to point out one advantage of these versus the reflex sight. This will actually function if the front lens is busted as well.
Very good point. If the front lens of this 510C, for instance, or even this 509 or these others are damaged, it is going to be inoperable and they're going to be out of commission.
And you need to check out series 1 of this video series about sights and optics, because you're going to need a co-witness sight if that actually happens.
Well, Jason, I don't know about you, but I learned quite a bit.
As we always do.
For this presentation. We hope you've taught you guys a thing or two as well.
So stay tuned for the next video in this series, magnifiers and variable optic scopes.
Yeah, I'm excited about that one too. And guys, make sure you hit those buttons, like, share, and subscribe, and help us set a positive 2A algorithm.
Thanks for watching.